The moment Noah Reddick realized he didn't oppose just break his future, he broke too. The sound was not a scream but a low, systemic crack. It sounded like glass shattering in slow motion, yet nothing was physically breaking, only time itself. He stood in the sterile silence of the future timeline he was trying to escape, yet the past timeline was bleeding through. He looked at his hands. They were trembling, phasing slightly. One reality wanted him to confess the truth. The other demanded his silence and flight. Both realities were now collapsing under the weight of his original lie. End quote. I just wanted to keep her safe, end quote. He whispered to the empty office. The image of his therapist, Declan Shore, wavered like bad reception. Declan's voice, calm but distorted by the temporal strain, echoed, end quote. Safety through absence is still abandonment. Noah, you tried to erase the guilt, but you only doubled the consequence. End quote. Then the split hit him fully. In the left timeline, Livia stood on the dividing bridge, wearing the thin blue coat he loved, looking across the chasm at him with pure, devastating disappointment. Owen Briggs was already beside her, steady and solid, holding the stability Noah never provided. In the right timeline, Livia was gone completely, leaving only a ghost of her scarf on the railing. Here, Noah's previous attempt to stay had driven her away entirely, and the destruction was swift and silent. The feeling was instantaneous. Profound, inescapable guilt, multiplied by two realities. He had fled the scene of the accident, the lie he told Livia, only to find the scene had multiplied and followed him. He ran back in time to avoid the pain of truth, only to open two parallel worlds defined by his cowardice. He clenched his jaw, the reality around him destabilizing, the color palette shifting violently between cold blue and dangerous red. This was the moment everything he thought he knew about second chances dissolved. He had arrived at the end of two worlds he destroyed. But to understand this inevitable catastrophe, we need to return to the single moment that started the double collapse. The day he ran. The precise instant he chose absence over accountability. The scent of old coffee and lavender was the first thing that anchored Noah. It was the specific, unavoidable smell of the apartment at 41st Street, a reality he had not touched in 7 years of self-imposed exile. He opened his eyes. The clock radio glowed 7 a.m. It was July 14th. The day. He sat up too quickly. The cheap cotton sheet clung to his chest. He was 35, but the mirror across the room reflected a younger version. A Noah who still believed he had control over consequences. The weight of 7 years of regret, the crushing memory of Declan Shore's office, the shattered marriage, and the future where Livia had looked at him with final, dead indifference. All that collapsed into this single, pristine moment. He had done it. He was back. Livia was already awake. She was in the kitchen, her dark hair pulled back loosely, humming a melody he recognized from a band they had seen years ago. She was wearing the soft gray sweater he loved. The tension in the air was subtle, not yet explosive. They had argued late the night before, a low rumble of unspoken issues, the foundation cracking before the flood. She knew something was wrong, but she did not know the truth. Not yet. He watched her pour 2 cups of coffee. She turned, her eyes bright and clear, lacking the haunted exhaustion he remembered seeing in her face in the future. This Livia, the one who existed just before the cataclysm, was still salvageable. This was the exact moment. The window of opportunity was impossibly small. In the future, his timeline had shattered because he had stayed. He had stayed to confess, to throw the ugly truth onto the table like a grenade, believing that honesty, no matter how damaging, was the only path forward. That truth had only accelerated her pain and destroyed them both. The guilt had been a slow-acting poison. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. The therapist's words echoed faintly, muffled by the sudden temporal displacement. You must face the consequence, Noah. You cannot run from the error. But what if the consequence was facing her pain? What if running was the lesser evil? Noah calculated the variables with the cold precision of someone analyzing a crash site. If he delivered the truth, Livia would suffer the agonizing betrayal, followed by years of bitter resentment, leading to a loud, destructive divorce, culminating in the complete emotional destruction of both of them. If he simply left now, the pain would be abandonment. Cleaner, faster. He would be the villain, the coward who ran from the mess he made, but Livia would be spared the slow, corrosive injury of knowing exactly how much he had lied. She would hate him, yes, but she would heal faster. He would carry the guilt doubled, but she would be safe. He chose the guilt. He chose the escape. He pushed off the bed, careful not to let the spring squeak. Livia's humming stopped. "Noah?" she called, her voice laced with the uncertainty that precedes a difficult conversation. He did not answer. He moved to the dresser, pulling out a duffel bag he hadn't used in months. He threw in a few dark shirts, his worn jacket, and his wallet. He avoided the heavy, accusatory gaze of the mirror. "I'm leaving," he said, his voice flat. It sounded foreign, rehearsed. Livia appeared in the doorway, her hands resting on the frame. Her face tightened instantly. She registered the duffel bag, the speed of his movements, the lack of eye contact. "Leaving for where?" she asked. The coffee in her hand began to cool. "Out. I need space. I need to think." "Think about what, Noah? We agreed we would talk this morning. Whatever this silent treatment is, it has to stop. We are going to fix this." She stepped forward, ready to fight for the future she still believed in. He saw the fighting spirit, the core of strength that had survived years in Timeline A, and he knew he had to crush it quickly to save her from the slow burn. "There is nothing to fix," he said, finally looking at her. He made sure his expression was blank, devoid of the overwhelming guilt that was actually strangling him. He pushed the future memory of her face, tear-streaked and unforgiving, deep inside. "It's over, Livia. It was a mistake. All of it." The words were brutally effective. Her posture slumped immediately. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a cold, stunned silence. "No," she whispered. "You don't mean that." He walked past her, reaching for the set of keys hanging by the door. He paused just long enough to grab a piece of scrap paper from the side table. He scribbled 3 words. "Gone. Don't follow." He dropped the note onto the kitchen counter, next to the cooling cup of coffee he would never drink. He ignored her choked gasp and the small, wet sound of the mug shattering on the wooden floor as she dropped it. He opened the apartment door. Stepping out, he felt the cool morning air on his face, but it offered no relief. It felt heavy, electric. He sprinted down the stairs. Once he reached the street and climbed into his beat-up sedan, he didn't look back. He started the engine, pulling away from 41st Street, leaving Livia behind in the fractured moment. As he drove, a terrifying sensation washed over him. It wasn't an Apo's simple relief. It was a profound physical disruption. The side mirror of the car flickered. For a split second, he didn't an Apo's. See the current street, he saw a hospital parking lot, wet with rain. A memory from Timeline A, years in the future, just before the final collapse. His chest tightened. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles were white. He was breathing too fast. "No," he muttered. "It's gone. That future is gone." But the memory was not gone. It was overlaid onto the present. He saw Livia in the apartment, standing over the broken mug. But simultaneously, behind that image, he saw Livia 7 years older, standing in the courtroom, signing divorce papers while wearing a ring that wasn't an Apo's. A ring he now knew belonged to a man named Owen Briggs. The timelines had not been cleanly separated. By running from the truth in the past, he hadn't erased Timeline A. He had merely initiated Timeline B, a second, equally painful reality, and now both futures were fighting for dominance in his mind. The established world had cracked. The simple reality of the present moment was immediately replaced by a horrifying, destabilizing fact. He was living in 2 states of consequence at once. His attempt to avoid pain had merely doubled the eventual destruction. Noah drove faster, fleeing the physical location, but the guilt, the true engine of the catastrophe, was trapped inside the car with him. The world outside the windshield seemed normal, but Noah Reddick was trapped on a razor-thin bridge between 2 collapsing realities. and he had nowhere left to run. The quiet safety of the establishment was over. The collapse had begun the moment he chose the lie of absence over the truth of responsibility. The guilt did not fade. It sharpened, becoming a physical presence that mirrored every move Livia Rowan made. Noah was an observer, shackled by his decision to avoid pain, watching as Livia found footing in the new timeline. That footing was Owen Briggs. Noah saw them first at the bookstore Livia frequented. Owen was strong, steady, wearing the easy confidence Noah had forfeited. Owen held Livia and Apos' hand, pulling her slightly closer as they navigated the crowded aisle. The intimacy was mundane, devastating, and entirely stable. Noah realized his flight had achieved the opposite of its intention. Livia was hurt regardless, but now Owen was there to prove how easy it was to stay. The real torment began when the walls between the and Apos, stay and Apos, timeline and the and Apos, flee and Apos, timeline started to dissolve. Noah was seated in his parked car late one afternoon, watching Livia exit her art studio. She was laughing, carrying a canvas, the sight familiar yet alien. Suddenly, the image flickered, the laughter muted. Livia's vibrant scarf turned ash gray, and the canvas in her hand looked cracked, broken into pieces. For a full second, he saw two Livias superimposed, one progressing steadily with Owen, and one sinking silently under the weight of his original betrayal. The world began to fracture around him. It was subtle at first, a distortion in the reflection of a shop window, showing his own face slightly doubled and out of focus. Then came the clocks. Every public timepiece he passed displayed two distinct minute hands, separated by exactly 7 minutes. The length of time he had stood paralyzed before fleeing the confrontation originally. He tried to intervene, not with Livia, but with the environment, hoping to solidify the current reality and suppress the memory timeline. He located the letter, the one he should have sent years ago confessing the truth, and tried to destroy it in the current timeline, believing that removing the evidence of the past would stabilize the present. He found the original draft, stored away in a box of old papers in his sister Marin's attic. As he held the thick paper, ready to tear it, the fibers disintegrated in his hands, turning to dust. He stared at his empty palms. The destruction had already occurred in the timeline he fled. He had no control here. His frustration mounted, driving him to Marin. He found her at a quiet coffee shop, her face tight with worry and exhaustion. And quote, "You and Apos, remaking it worse, Noah," and quote. Marin said, her voice low and cutting. And quote, "The ground beneath you is giving way. Can and Apos? Do you feel it?" And quote. And quote, "I and Apos am trying to fix the original mistake," and quote. Noah pleaded. And quote, "If I can stabilize the reality where I ran, maybe the other one vanishes," and quote. Marin slammed her mug down, the sound echoing too loud in the small space. And quote, "You didn't in Apos. Break the future when you made the mistake, Noah. You broke everything when you refused to own the consequence. You ran from the truth, and the universe created two voids instead of one." End quote. This was the realization, the cold, sharp point of the truth. His attempt to avoid guilt had doubled the temporal damage. Running away was not a repair. It was an amplification. The lie was bad, but the flight was catastrophic. He had to stop running. He had to confess everything to the version of Livia that existed now, regardless of the outcome. The truth, painful as it was, might be the only anchor left. Noah left Marin abruptly, the coffee shop itself seeming to tremble as he moved. He started running toward Livia's current apartment. The location he knew was critical in this timeline. The city began to actively fight his progress. The asphalt beneath his feet seemed to shift texture, cycling between smooth pavement and coarse, forgotten dirt. Distorted whispers followed him, fragments of dialogue he had exchanged with Livia years ago, overlaid with sounds of future static. He approached the bridge, the famous split visual Livia often painted. Now, the division was real. One side of the arch was meticulously maintained, bathed in harsh, stable sunlight. The other side was shadowed, rusted, draped in vines that Warren and Apos their moments before. It was the physical manifestation of the split realities. He had to cross the stable side. He pushed himself forward, his lungs burning, fighting a heavy, temporal resistance that felt like wading through thick water. As he reached the center, the air thickened. He saw Owen not as a threat but as a stabilizing force. Owen was standing guard in both timelines simultaneously. In the sunny reality, Owen was arguing playfully with Livia over directions. In the rusted reality, Owen was simply standing silently, a sentinel against the collapse. Noah staggered off the bridge and into the small park opposite Livia's building. He searched desperately until he spotted her near a fountain, sitting alone, sketching. This was his chance. No Owen, no visible temporal disruption, only Livia. He began to walk toward her, carefully, readying the confession he had delayed for years and crossed timelines to avoid. He opened his mouth to speak the first, simple word, and quote, "Livia," and quote. Before the sound could leave his throat, the reality fractured completely. A blinding, icy blue light erupted around the fountain. Livia did not move, but the sketchpad in her lap split down the middle. Noah saw two images flash across his vision. One Livia turning toward him with profound sadness, the other Livia looking away, already healed. And then Owen appeared, not walking but manifesting instantaneously on the park bench beside her. He didn't oppose. Look at Noah. He simply placed a calm, steady hand on Livia and Apos' shoulder, securing her. Livia looked up at Owen, her eyes clear, acknowledging his presence, his stability. She was untouchable. Noah stood frozen 10 feet away, witnessing the terrifying truth. He had returned to save her from his original failure, but his avoidance had only ensured that Livia found a replacement for his instability in both versions of reality. He was a ghost in two shattered timelines. He was too late. The confession died again, swallowed by the noise of two futures collapsing simultaneously around him. The fractured timelines did not merely overlap. They began to grate against each other, grinding down the edges of Noah's reality. He saw his own hands, one gripping the key to his old apartment, the other clenched tight around the steering wheel of the escape car. Both sets of knuckles were white, both versions of his life dissolving. The air thinned. The sound was deafening. 1,000 shattered mirrors echoing Livia's silent exit. He was standing on the middle of the river bridge, the structure physically manifesting his predicament. One half of the bridge led toward the city where he had faced Livia and failed. The other led to the quiet, empty town where he had fled. Both paths were cracked, spiraling inward. Owen appeared in both visions simultaneously. Owen was the anchor Noah refused to be. In Future A, Livia stood on the porch of the home they lost. She was older, wiser, holding a box of belongings. Owen was there, silently loading the final boxes into a truck. Noah, thinner and defeated, stepped forward, ready to try the confession one last time, and quote, "Livia, please, I should have told you everything then. I was too weak," and quote. Future Noah A pleaded. Livia A didn't oppose. Looked back. She addressed Owen, and quote, "Are we ready to go?" And quote. Future B was harsher. This Livia was younger, freshly heartbroken from his flight. She was looking at Owen, who had his arm firmly around her. They were walking toward a small coffee shop, a symbol of the stable life they were building. Noah B, panicked and desperate, ran after them. And quote, "Wait, I came back for you. I didn't oppose. Mean to leave." End quote. Future Noah B shouted. Livia B simply tightened her grip on Owen. She didn't oppose. Flinch didn't oppose. Pause. She had already accepted his absence. Noah Reddick, the man suspended between realities, watched the two versions of himself collapse. They collided on the spectral bridge, two ghosts of failure merging into one agonizing realization. The fault was not the timeline. The fault was the pattern. He ran when he should have stood still. He waited when he should have confessed. The collapsing worlds intensified. The color palette shifted entirely to gray and broken blue. The faces of Marin, his sister, and Declan, his therapist, flashed across the collapsing space, their expressions confirming his self-destruction. End quote. The guilt is the escape, end quote. Declan's voice boomed in his mind. End quote. You think feeling bad is the same as fixing it. It's not. End quote. Noah knew then what he had to do. He had to stop running. He had to find the true moment of fracture, the instant where his original cowardice had set this entire loop in motion, and deliver the truth. He burst back into the most immediate reality, the reality created by his latest flight, the one where Livia was walking away with Owen. He ran faster than he had ever run, past the cracking concrete of the bridge, ignoring the shards of memory slicing through the air. He had to get to Livia before she made the final, definitive choice to commit to Owen's steady presence. He reached the coffee shop just as Livia and Owen were stepping inside. The door was glass and he could see them clearly. Owen was smiling gently. Livia was reaching for his hand. It was the calm before the storm, the quiet commitment that would lock this future forever. Noah slammed his hands against the glass door. End quote. Livia. End quote. They both turned. Owen's face was stone, protective and cold. Livia's face, however, held no anger, only a profound, exhausted indifference. Noah didn't wait. He didn't care which version of the truth he spoke, only that he spoke it all. End quote. It was me. I did it. I broke the trust we had because I was terrified of being honest. I came back in time not to save us, but to save myself from the consequences, and I made it worse. I ran not once, but twice, because I am a coward. I deserve the pain, Livia. Not you. I know it's too late, but you need to know. Everything that broke was because of my lack of courage. End quote. He stood there, breathless, exposed, finally stripping away the protective layer of guilt he had worn for years. The confession was absolute. Livia stepped toward the door, forcing Owen to hold back. She slid the door open just enough for her voice to carry, which was low and steady, lacking any sharp edge of pain. End quote. Noah, I know. End quote. That simplicity hit him harder than any accusation. She knew. She had always known. The truth had been evident in his actions, not his words. End quote. You came back, end quote. She continued, her eyes fixed on his. End quote. And you ran again. That's not a mistake, Noah. That's who you are, end quote. Owen reached for her, placing his hand reassuringly on her shoulder. End quote. You said it yourself, end quote. Livia finished. End quote. You came back to save yourself. You still are. I don't need saving from the truth, Noah. I need a man who stays when the truth hurts, end quote. She took Owen's hand, stepped back inside the coffee shop, and without a backward glance, the glass door slid shut. The world outside did not magically repair itself. The two collapsing timelines did not snap back into a cohesive reality. Instead, the final, decisive action, Livia choosing stability over the eternal return of his regret, caused the ultimate, irreversible fragment. The pavement beneath Noah's feet cracked completely. The duplicate mirrors in his mind, future A and future B, shattered into millions of tiny pieces simultaneously. The quiet click of the coffee shop door locking her future in place was the sound of both timelines dying. Noah Reddick stood alone on the splintering ground, finally free of the loops, but utterly lost in the void. He had the truth. He had confessed. But the admission only confirmed that the past was beyond mending. His lack of courage had not just broken one future. His flight had doomed both. He bent over, grabbing the last piece of the reality that was now gone. A shred of the letter he meant to send Livia years ago. It read only, end quote. I am sorry I was, end quote. He was too late. The end was final. Se que esta historia é intensa. E por isso que eu compartilho esses momentos. Se você valoriza a verdade e gosta de histórias que te fazem pensar e sentir. Faça o seguinte. Considera esse inscrever no canal e comente de qual cidade você está assistindo. O melhor jeito de garantir que você não perca a próxima lição de vida. The world did not end in fire for Noah Reddick. It ended in silence, amplified by the sound of everything breaking at once. He was standing on the precipice of two ruins, not one. Reality Alpha, where he stayed and caused the initial pain, was a black hole of resentment. He saw a final, flickering image of Livia's face, etched with the cold certainty that the man she loved would always choose denial over decency. That Noah was gone, consumed by the resentment of the life he chose to remain in. Reality Beta, the future he fled to create, was a mirror reflecting hollow, cold absence. This Livia was softer, perhaps less scarred, but she carried the heavy burden of abandonment. The future she found with Owen was stable, structured, and safe. Everything Noah was not. But safety was not the same as happiness. He saw the final echo, Livia's hand resting on Owen's arm, a gesture of thanks, not passion. In both fractured worlds, Livia was gone from him. He had achieved the ultimate failure, securing neither his own redemption nor her true peace. Noah stretched out a hand to where the rift had violently closed. He saw Livia standing on the shattered remnants of the bridge, neither looking fully to the future nor the past, simply existing in the fractured now that he had violently enforced. He finally spoke the words he should have uttered years, timelines, and heartbreaks ago. Raw and unedited, the confession tore from his throat and was immediately swallowed by the vacuum of the broken realities. And quote, "It was my fault. All of it. I broke the trust. I was a coward." End quote. The sound carried no weight. It was merely an echo bouncing off two futures already sealed shut. He had arrived at the truth, but the window for that truth to matter had closed permanently. He saw the phantom image of Declan Shore, his future therapist, hovering at the edge of his vision, the quiet judgment clear. And quote, "You didn't Inapos. Break the past with your mistake, Noah. You broke everything when you refused to own it." End quote. The full scope of his selfish choice descended. He hadn't Inapos. Just destroyed his future. He had destroyed the potential of her future. By trying to cheat destiny and escape his own character flaw, the tendency toward flight, he ensured that Livia's potential happiness was also halved, distorted, and rearranged by his absence. Owen Briggs, the man of stability, was not the antagonist of this story. He was merely the inevitable consequence. Owen stepped into the vacuum that Noah created. He was the force of stability that highlighted Noah's catastrophic instability. The tragedy of Noah Reddick is not a tragedy of time travel. It is a fundamental tragedy of the human condition. We are taught that confession is painful, but silence is safe. Noah operated on this belief. He confused avoidance with sacrifice. He believed that if he removed the source of Livia and Apos' pain himself, the pain would vanish. But pain does not vanish. It transfers, calcifies. In reality Alpha, Livia's pain was resentment. In reality Beta, her pain was distrust. In both scenarios, the original wound of betrayal was healed by a deeper, permanent scar left by abandonment. Noah's error was thinking that the confession was the destructive act. He learned too late that the confession, though painful, is the act of healing, the only tether to reality. The destruction came from the withholding, the hiding, the running. The central truth that Noah learned standing amidst the ruins of two timelines was this: guilt is not just an emotion. It is a gravitational force. When you try to run from the gravity of your own mistakes, you don and Apos. Find freedom. You simply shift the center of the universe until it collapses in on itself. His initial error broke their relationship. His subsequent flight broke reality. The past was not broken by the truth he needed to tell, but by the devastating, self-serving lack of it. He gained nothing but the certainty that some truths, once withheld, can never be returned, even by the twisting power of time. The two mirrors showing the broken versions of Noah finally shattered entirely, leaving only the reflection of a man who realized that the most dangerous enemy was never outside him. It was the fear inside that refused to own its own story. The paradox is cruel. He went back to save Livia from the consequences of his truth, only to lose her forever to the consequences of his lie. This is the ultimate lesson of time and consequence. You cannot outrun who you are, no matter what timeline you inhabit. The universe demands honesty, When you withhold it, especially from those you claim to love, the universe eventually collects the debt in a currency far more valuable than time itself. The complete destruction of every possible future. Noah Reddick, standing alone between realities, finally understood what Marin and Declan had tried to teach him. Acceptance is the only antidote to the chaos of the past. But he learned it years too late, in a place where only the echoes of regret remained. Now, I want to know from you. Comment here underneath. Which would have been your choice in my place? Would you have made this sacrifice? And if you like surprising endings, I left another video right here next to this one. It and Apos, a shocking story. Click there. I and Apos, LL see you in the next video.